Hello and welcome to the new show I like to call Collider Trek Talk, actually the show where we review Star Trek Discovery. I am Admiral Jason Inman, and we're going to talk about Star Trek Discovery Episode 7, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. And I couldn't go mad all by myself. I have an amazing panel here to talk about Star Trek. To my right, I have the head of Starfleet Academy, Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, hello there. I'm not mad, I'm mud.
Oh. Great line there. All right. He pulled it in from the episode. That's a reference you'll get later. And also to my right, I have the lovely and amazing head of Starfleet Medical, Ashley Victoria Robinson.
That's a huge upgrade from last time. I keep getting her promotion every time. This is the most wonderful Halloween gift I could have ever asked for.
This is a great Halloween gift right the day before Halloween. Well, we have a new episode of Star Trek to talk about, an episode of Star Trek that kind of seems like a lot of other episodes of Star Trek. We kind of borrowed some plots from famous Star Trek Next Generation episode, Cause and Effect, of course, most famously Star Trek Voyager, Year of Hell. But we had a lot of hairy mud in this episode. So first off, I want to talk about, we're all big Star Trek fans here. And I thought it was very interesting that this was the first episode of Star Trek Discovery to start with a personal log. Usually, most Star Trek series start with the captain's log, the commander's log, and this is the very first one. Robert, what do you think? It took us to episode 7, and we got the personnel log.
Well, the personal log didn't seem like there was a lot of really urgent stuff going on, considering the Discovery's on a war footing. And the last episode, we saw Sarek almost get killed. We have Starfleet Admiral, who's been captured by the Klingons. But, you know, Burnham seems to be talking about her place on the ship and how she fits in, and now she has friends. And I don't, as a serialized story that we're getting here, I didn't get a lot of urgency from that personal log. I don't know what the Discovery's really supposed to be doing for the most formidable ship in the Federation arsenal.
Well, I will agree to you.
But it was good insight into her.
Yeah, it was, and it was a nice little moment. And I that's a fair point that they do mention that Discovery is winning the war for the Federation. Now, we haven't seen that between this episode and the last episode, but I will say that I did think it was a good choice because to start this episode with a party, because it's more interesting, I think, when you're doing a time loop to start off with a joyous event or an event that makes it uncomfortable when you have to do serious matters. Ashley, what did you think about the Star Trek party scene?
I thought it was strange. I like it from like the sociological standpoint that it felt like a party that I could have gone to, that we all have gone to over the past weekend, celebrating Halloween. It felt very modern. Usually the parties feel kind of weird, and they're usually like vaguely Klingon. TNG has a lot of parties, okay? And I felt like it felt maybe the most genuine, the most of a piece. And what I like about this episode and what I like best about Discovery is when it is interpersonal. I actually think the stuff with the Klingon War, even though that's the framing device, works least well. So even though Burnham's log didn't have really anything to do with the overarching narrative, I liked it, and I liked seeing that device return to this story.
We also had another return to our running theory is Lieutenant Tyler Vok the Klingon, and in the middle of this party, he becomes a big downer, and he's like, we must remember the fallen. Success. I mean, come on. I would love to do this every single week we do a Star Trek Discovery review.
Reflection on is Vok a Klingon?
is Lieutenant Tyler Vok, because I thought that speech, only a Klingon could give that speech, not any human. Robert, what do you think?
Well, at least it acknowledged that there was something going on. I mean, I thought that party seemed like it was out of the CW. I mean, it was like out of some teen show.
CW very trendy right now.
I mean, they're playing beer pong. You know, they're talking about what guys you date. And again, if the party was in the context of the overarching narrative, or at least had something. I mean, Star Trek has always been allegorical in the stories that it's telling. So seeing a generic party, remember, this is one of the most expensive TV shows produced.
It's like $8 million an episode, correct?
If you break it down, it's $177,777 and about 89 cents a minute. Wow. So this is the
most. Wants to hire me under that salary.
This is the most expensive party scene we've ever seen produced for television in the history of the medium, in terms of time and money spent. Was it a good use of Star Trek storytelling? I don't know. It seemed a little too generic in terms of the story that they were going to tell, and considering what happened last week, we've lost a Starfleet admiral. Sarek is very wounded, presumably still in sick bay. Never mentioned.
It's true.
Never mentioned.
Yeah, we get no line about where. I would assume that Sarek has been transferred to Vulcan by now.
I would have assumed the same thing, or that he's at a Starfleet outpost somewhere.
That is another thing too. In many of the Star Trek series, we do get the illusions that we don't have any idea how much time passes between each adventure. Now, I
think that's certainly the case in this series.
Oh, especially it kind of seems like in a couple parts we've jumped ahead like a month. Now, of course, the pilot jumped ahead 6 months, but for me, especially in the past with like Voyager or Deep Space Nine or TNG, it always seemed like it was almost a real time with the viewer. Like a week passed between, we haven't seen a week.
Yeah.
Basically, Ashley, what do you feel about, do you think this is a strength or a weakness that Star Trek Discovery is doing these massive time jumps?
I think it's a weakness that we don't have even the implication of a pattern, because like you said, I don't know if all the other original series ever laid it out unless there was a big time jump, but we felt this sort of idea that we were going along with them in real time. And there's nothing here, because we are jumping from like catastrophic event to catastrophic event without, we're not even getting a star date. Like at least in the previous years, we got star dates. So if you were into it enough, you could figure out how much time had passed. I think it's a weakness, and it's something that would be easy to course correct, so it doesn't bother me that much. But I want to go back to the party scene really quick. There is a moment where you see a crew member who had been injured and who's working in a version of Christopher Pike's wheelchair, but is like disabled and still on the Discovery. And I thought that was cool. And I like that we're seeing Starfleet be inclusive of people who have disabilities and who were injured on the job.
And there are little cool moments about that, because we get to meet the giant space whale, the Gorgamander, as I wrote it down, the Gorgamander space whale.
Gormagander.
Gormagander, Godzilla. I don't know. So at one point they bring up the Starfleet regulation that there is an endangered species list of the galaxy.
I love that.
Those are those little touches of Starfleet that I actually really like, and it's something that this show sometimes does really, really well. And then, of course, it led into the main plot of this episode. Harry Mudd hid his ship inside this giant space whale, and he's got a device that makes you react every 30 minutes, just like Groundhog Day. I personally liked Harry Mudd a lot better in this episode than I did in the previous episode. Maybe because he was more active as a character instead of just sitting in the background cackling with a bug that stole crackers.
Real quick, was I the only one who thought that his little watch looked like the Doctor's time reset?
Oh, the time vortex manipulator?
I thought it looked exactly
you weren't.
like
No,
that.
You weren't. But I liked him a lot better in this episode, although this is very much, Robert, you said before that this is a supervillain Mudd that we have never seen before.
Well, first of all, Harry Mudd somehow got a spaceship inside a space whale. How does that happen? Because
he covered it with peanut butter first, and then he kind of massaged his throat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then he's got his Andorian spacesuit, and he's got this time gem, and he's figured out where the Discovery is. But this space whale, how does the space whale get near to the Discovery? I mean, he uses a lure to bring the Discovery there, and then his first act is to, and as he does the whole episode, just murder a bunch of people as he's slowly figuring out, how does he even know anything about the Discovery at all? The Discovery is this super secret R&D ship where they've created the most important thing, as they say, the most important weapon the Federation has against the war against the Klingons. How does Mudd even know anything about the Discovery and what it would be worth, and why would Mudd spend all this time and think he could actually infiltrate the ship and do all of this stuff? I mean, we've seen episodes like this, these 30-minute time loops on X-Files, on Buffy, but they're always used to illuminate the characters. You always get insight into the characters, and in what Mudd's doing, we didn't see the kind of sleuthing that went on in, say, Cause and Effect, where you had something clever like the card playing, which let Data was telling something himself. Stamets would just show up and say, hey, this is how it works, because I work outside of space-time.
You did see it more towards the end, especially when, as the loops kept going, Harry Mudd, you saw at the beginning was just killing people left and right, but at the end you saw him like just going around a corner, wait for a second, go around a corner, wait for a second. Like by the end, he had like sort of memorized the duty roster somehow.
Yeah. I'd like to respectfully, because we are friends, we were made friends. I'd like to argue with you because I feel like this episode, the point is not to illuminate Harry Mudd. For me, he was very much the device to get more into Burnham. And I think this episode succeeds in proving to me that Burnham is useful, that she's capable, and that she's an interesting character. And I feel like that's something that personally I thought was lacking in previous episodes.
Which I agree with, but she was on the Shenzhou for 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
So she was already a capable officer. We already know this. And I think that the ultimate point of this episode comes down to we forgot our first kiss. That was it. I mean,
you don't think that was a nice moment?
I think it was a nice moment, but is that worth $8 million of your budget? And if you've got 15 hours or 15
well, I didn't pay the $8 million,
episodes,
so I don't care.
No, but I look at that, and I would hope as an allegorical science fiction action adventure that I expect more out of my Star Trek. You know, and also the idea, we had a montage of Mudd murdering Lorca in this episode.
I loved it.
But what is that saying? Like, as far as our show goes, since when did Harry Mudd, charming rogue, crazy person, become a murderer? Like, if he was not foiled in his attempt to do this, all of these characters would have been dead. Like, he would have gone through, and it sort of, to me, made light of death. And look, in Cause and Effect, when the whole Enterprise blows up because it crashes into the Bozeman, that is a catastrophic event that isn't a wanton murder fest.
Sure.
And while in this, I'm like, is Harry Mudd that character?
You know,
apparently he is.
You know, it's interesting because I think you could almost make that argument that the reason why, again, the explanation for the Vulcan Kung Fu and the explanation for supervillain Harry Mudd murdering everybody is just kind of like where modern storytelling is right now. And now I might disagree with it, a lot of it, because I bring up several times the scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 where we have a happy song as Yondu murders hundreds of people.
By the way, Guardians of the Galaxy 1, the highest casualty rate of any movie ever made, 83,000.
Yeah.
Look it up.
So like, you know, and that was a big blockbuster hit. And this kind of reminds
Unless
me...
you're on Alderaan.
That's true.
Oh, unless you're on Alderaan.
This is a post.
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
a post Deadpool world, and I think that's a reaction to it. And I think if that character had been anyone other than Harry Mudd, and I don't necessarily think he should have been Harry Mudd.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think it might have stuck a little. It might have stuck the landing a little bit.
Well,
better.
one of the things that I said, and I think we brought this up every week we've done a review, is that if it's interesting that this episode, and I think one of the reasons why I think this episode works so well for me is because we don't deal with the Klingon War. We don't deal with there's nothing in this episode besides Harry Mudd to date it as a pre-TOS show.
It's strictly interpersonal. It's all about building out
Yeah.
Stamets and Tyler and Burnham.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest with you, one of the things what I liked about the time loop the most was because I was really worried last week or the week before that we were going to get a whole episode about the romance of Lieutenant Tyler and Burnham. Oh, ha, ha, ha. Star Trek does not do romance well. It never
Traditionally,
has.
yeah.
It really doesn't. And I thought that this was an interesting way to kind of give us this romance subplot, but not really focus on it and let that relationship progress. Because I actually thought the kiss line was a great line of dialogue. I understand your point where you're like, that's kind of like the whole crux of the episode, but I thought there was enough character beats in this episode through that relationship that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ride.
I agree with you. I thought I liked what was going on with Burnham and Tyler. I just would have liked to have seen it in the context of a story that had something more going on than just... It seemed to me like even Cause and Effect, if you look back or you look at the X-Files episode where the bank explodes or the Buffy episode, those episodes, or Groundhog Day, you're illuminating the human condition, you know, and I think that their relationship is interesting. But let's see it in the context of a science fiction action adventure. You know, it seemed like this was all sort of forced. And where did he get this crystal?
Yeah.
And I did like the things like the quantum singularity that Lorca had in his office, all the
That was
different
really
weapons.
cool.
I mean, there's all these really interesting things in this episode where you're like, huh.
There's nice little touches, nice little moments. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
May I pose a question? If we learn that Lieutenant Tyler is Vok or is some sort of traitor, will this scene and this episode in retrospect resonate more with you?
Maybe. I mean, I'd like to believe we live in a golden age of serialized storytelling. Stranger Things 2 dropped this week. We've got, if you look at Breaking Bad, you look at Game of Thrones, the tight plotting of these shows. I love stories. And I love stories where I understand that these showrunners know what the story is that they're telling. And I feel that with Discovery, I don't know what I'm supposed to be concentrating on. I don't know what am I supposed to be watching and looking out for when it looks like next week's episode goes back to
the
we
Klingon
see
War.
the Admiral,
Yeah.
you know.
There is a little bit of, I thought with this episode, even though I enjoyed it, and last week's episode, we have 2 episodes in a row where we're not dealing with the ongoing Klingon War story thread. And I kind of wondered, is that a respect of these are the new writers that are taking over after Brian Fuller, and we don't know where he was taking that storyline, and we need some time to figure it out. So let's do these 2 one-off episodes, and then we'll go back to it. Ashley, do you think there's any of that we're going away from the main storyline too much?
I don't think so, because like I mentioned earlier, I like these episodes better than the Klingon War storyline. So I'm actually more interested in watching episodes like this. This was my favorite episode so far, and I'm sure when we summarize it up, I'll be very pleased. I think, though, it is systemic of the way the show came together, and this is not a secret. It's been very public that the show has gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, if you will. And that's a great episode. Google it. I think if it had stayed under a single showrunner, maybe we wouldn't notice the gaps as much as we do.
Sure.
But it doesn't bother me.
Another thing that I want to talk about is, quickly, as I've said before, my love for Lieutenant Stamets, played by Anthony Rapp. I loved him in this episode. I thought he had a really good moment in this episode. I liked that the storyline was presented around him, although I have a nitpick that he kind of felt like he didn't do much in any of the little loops. He always waited till the last 5 minutes of each 30-minute loop, but I will say that I did get my favorite scene of Star Trek Discovery yet is in this episode. It was the episode where Burnham and Stamets danced.
Can you believe that you're saying that? That was... at face value, that's your favorite part of the
Dancing doesn't
episode.
work on Star Trek either. This episode had a lot of stuff that doesn't work on Star Trek, and I actually thought they pulled it off well. But hearing the story of how him and Culber met, I thought was a genuine moment. And the character moments of him being like, let me lead, Burnham, please.
Yeah.
But again, he waited till the last 5 minutes of the loop to do it, which I was like, come on,
I
time better.
want to argue with you about this, because you've said this a number of times since we watched the episode. For me, that read more as he knows this is going to happen again and again and again, so he's using each loop to accomplish a single thing, to get a single piece of information and then move on. So I didn't feel like that was as huge a deal as obviously you felt like it was.
Well, let's ask this question, Rob. Towards the end of the episode, it did really seem like Burnham was starting to remember too, which I thought was a little bit of contradicted what we learned in the beginning of the episode.
Look, I agree, first of all, with what you said about Stamets and Burnham. I liked that relationship and how it was developing, and I felt you started... Look, anytime we learn more about our characters, it's great. I did enjoy that. But again, by the time you got to the end of the time loop, everybody just seemed in on it. Like, everybody knew.
Everybody
Lorca
knew,
knew.
even Lorca.
Everybody
It could
know.
have been creative editing and creative storytelling so that we don't have to tell him everything again.
It just seemed like it wasn't as well constructed. I guess I expect more out of, if you're going to watch these characters interact, the whole point of a story like this is to watch our characters interact together and be smart. Like, if you're going to have them all collectively do that, that's what Cause and Effect does very, very well. Everybody plays their part. And I thought Stamets did a great job because he's outside of the time stream because of his DNA, which is okay. But
He's half tardigrade now.
He's half tardigrade.
Because he's not
true.
from this time.
That's true in real life of Anthony Rapp, too, by the way.
That's why he's so pale.
Go look it up on the wiki.
I just think I wanted to see more, like, suddenly Lorca's on board. He's like knowing everything that's happening as well. I just wanted more of that. But again, the Burnham, that was a great scene when he explains how they met. I loved that scene. And that's more of that's very Star Trek.
It is. And having it be dancing is very TNG.
It was very TNG. And I loved all of that stuff. But I'd like to see it in the service of a story that, where does a magical time gem come from? Especially, did he pick it up on the Klingon ship?
Well, it kind of made it sound like that he had it when he robbed the Betazoid bank, which was a nice little Easter egg to Deanna Troi.
It was in his little storage unit on Vulcan or something.
I guess. But the one thing that I actually didn't understand is that when he let the time loop resume, when he let normal time happen, it disintegrated.
Yeah.
Which was a weird thing for me. That was something they didn't explain for me that kind of bothered me.
Well, when you turn it on, it only lasts for 30 minutes.
To me, it read very much as, I think Rainn Wilson forgot to put it on for that scene, so we're just going to get rid of it.
Oh, I kind of took it as the writers being like, we can't have a weapon this powerful out in the universe, or else they'll... It's like the...
But they could have just put it in Lorca's treasure room.
Well, it's like the immortal blood from Star Trek Into Darkness. If that exists in that universe, nobody can die.
But if he did have that, isn't there easier ways to make money than trying to steal a super secret starship from the people that know how to run it? I mean, couldn't you just go to some bank, I don't know, the memory alpha of money or
he
the
could have robbed
credits?
Ferenginar.
Yeah, he could have gone to the whole planet. I mean, it was like, you look at these things and it's a time loop story is always great, but piling on all of these extra added, I'm going to beam my ship inside a space whale. Sure, that's a good plan. You know,
a nice little touch, though, I did like that happened at the end of the episode, which is a nice little call into the original series, was we got to see Stella. Now, we talked about her the last time we talked about Mud, and we actually get to see the Baron for the very first time, I believe, because he was not seen in I, Mud at all, the original series episode. But it's interesting to see that this Stella loves Mud so much, especially when we see that Mud, when he later reprograms the robot, she hates him.
Yeah.
She hates him. So it'll be interesting to see that relationship progress. But also, I loved both of their costumes because it really seemed like they walked out of 1966.
that was
Yes,
the
absolutely.
Yeah.
Except, how did they? In 30 minutes, how did the Discovery find out where Stella and her father and call him
Everyone has spore drives now.
Apparently,
Everyone.
you can just travel the highways and byways of the cosmic freeway system and get to wherever you're going. Like in 24, you can go from Pacoima to downtown LA in 15
And
minutes.
nobody pees. It's great.
Nobody pees. So overall, I'd love to hear some final thoughts on this episode, and then I'd love to introduce a brand new thing into the show. I'd love us. So we only have a couple more episodes left before the mid-season break. After that, we're gonna do some predictions. I'd love to see if we can predict where we think this Star Trek Discovery is going. Rob, overall, what are your thoughts about? I can't even remember this insanely long
Madness,
title.
Magic of Megas 2.
Too much mud.
Wow, that was a great reference to the animated
Thank you.
series. Nicely done. What did I think of this episode? I'm wondering. My only objection is that this was clearly a bottle show.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Where they're shooting on the sets, the existing sets, to save money so they can spend more money for space
The
battles.
party scene looked like it was actually in a redressed Tilly's quarters.
It probably was.
Probably was with plastic cups. You know, I've been to better parties than they throw on the Discovery. Let me tell you.
And with better music.
I thought this episode exists in a long line of time loop episodes. I would expect. It disappointed me that this was the 7th episode of the show. I would have thought that they would have waited till season 3 or 4 to do an episode like this. But I did like the character stuff. I did like learning more about. Look, the actors are. Whenever the actors are given meat to play, I think we as viewers win.
Yeah.
And when there's more of that going on, I think I'd like to see it more in service of a better story. But bring it on. Bring on those characters.
Ashley, how about you?
I really enjoyed this episode. I think I liked the weight and the gravitas that this classic sci-fi trope brought to Discovery. I would like to see more of that, although spaced out. I think there was great writing on the dialogue and great performances, and I'm hoping that we can continue this kind of momentum going forward in the larger narrative. How about you, Jason?
There was a lot of great dialogue in this episode. There was a lot of great character moments in this episode. And I think this episode, because it used the classic sci-fi trope, for me, became the first episode of Star Trek Discovery that I would show an outside Star Trek fan. Because, every Star Trek series has that episode where people are like, I don't know where to start. This has become, finally, Star Trek Discovery 7 episodes in has that episode. This would be the episode that I would show you because it's so far removed from the ongoing storyline that I don't think you need to know anything about the series to watch it and enjoy it. Now, I would love to hear some thoughts. We have 2 episodes left before the halfway break. I wonder if there's going to be a cliffhanger. Ashley, let's start with you. Do you have any predictions for what we might see in the next 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery?
I honestly think that we are going to get a season 9 cliffhanger because they're going to
Episode 9, you mean?
Yep, that's what I mean. Season 9 cliffhanger. I'm looking way to the future.
Wow, she's so confident in this series, guys.
And because I think they're going to not want people to cancel their subscription. They're going to want people to go back and watch and look for little Easter eggs and blah, 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 blah over these 2 or so months that it's off. And I do think it's going to have to do with Mud. I think we get Rainn Wilson one more time.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Plus, because IMDb says he's in more than just 2 episodes.
Oh, damn it.
And I think he's going to be a big part of the cliffhanger.
All right, Robert.
First of all, I didn't quite know what the Discovery is doing. Are they doing?
I don't know if Lorca knows.
Yeah, I don't think he knows because they never seem to be going anywhere. Like the original
Or
series,
fighting any battles.
Our 5-year
Yeah.
mission, they're not fighting battles. They don't seem to be leading troops. We've seen them rescue one colony. I just don't know what they're doing. I would like to know. I'd like to see more of that. But I do think they have added an extra episode. It was only going to be 8 episodes before the break. They've pushed a 9th episode into this first bit, which leads me to believe that 9th episode, something pretty big and epic happens. Whether it's some kind of a mirror reveal, whether Tyler is exposed. I think we're going to see some kind of a pivot or a game change moment for the Discovery and her crew. I don't quite know what that is yet, but I think it's going to leave us all breathless and I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
I'm throwing out something crazy. I'm activating my Spore drive for craziness, and I'm going to say that the Lieutenant Tyler as Vok happens in episode 9, but before he steals, maybe the spores or maybe probably Stamets, he is going to kill someone on this crew because this series has touted several times that we're the violent series. We can kill characters. We're going to do this stuff, and that's where Cadet Tilly goes away.
Ooh.
Because you want to prove that Lieutenant Tyler is evil, and you do that by killing the most innocent character.
Nice girl.
The nice character.
But she, as we saw this past episode, boy, she could do that hair flip.
yeah.
Oh, man.
She's all into people
She's
that
living
have
in an
bands.
Ariana Grande video, really.
Yeah. All right, so that is it for this episode of Collider Trek Talk. Robert Meyer Burnett, where can the lovely people find you in the spaceways?
Oh, you can find my anger and vitriol about this show on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at RMBurnett, or find me on Facebook at Robert Meyer Burnett.
Ashley, where can they find you when you're not at Starfleet Medical?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. Please tweet me cute pictures of Anthony Rapp. Thank you.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Jawin. And don't forget, if you're going to your local comic book shop, you can order mine and Ashley's first comic book miniseries, Jupiter Jet, right now. I don't know why I said singular. My Spore drive is all messed up. That you're going to plug me in. Don't worry, we're going to be back next week for another episode of Star Trek Discovery Review. Until then, put down the remotes, or put down I can't even talk. The Spore drives I'm Mirror Jason. I've now become Mirror Jason. I've taken over the show, and I'll see you next week for an evil episode of Collider Trek Talk.
Hey everybody, Josh McCouga here. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Collider TV Talk. Want to watch more episodes? Click there. It's an interactive link. Or for more Collider content, click down there. Subscribe to the channel. Tell all your friends. Get an airplane. Drive it by that says Collider. I'm not telling you to buy an airplane. Just do whatever you want as long as you're watching Collider video.